Go ahead.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to Radius Art Space. I'd like to just begin by acknowledging the Dajarun people. So today we meet and gather on Jara people country, of which members and elders of the Dajarun community and their forebearers have been custodians for many centuries. On this land, the Jara people have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We recognise their resilience through dispossession and is a testament to their culture, which is strong and thriving. We acknowledge this living culture and the ongoing role in the life of this region. And into this, acknowledge past, present and future Dajarun elders and any elders that may be present at our event today. So we'll just begin. There's a bit of housekeeping. Toilets through here on the left. Light is probably on, but if it's off, it's to the right as you come in. This, yeah. So I think I won't waste too much of our time here. Obviously we're here for this shared presentation, but it mostly belongs to Kim and her work into dyslexia and creativity, which she can expand upon. I'll just introduce myself. I'll read my own bio, which is kind of a bit weird, but you know.
I've written for you if you like. It's alright to do it.
Yeah, it's in I though. Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Next time.
Yeah, I'm Peter O'Mara, and I'm a qualified primary school teacher and secondary school teacher, and I'm also a multi-sensory learning specialist educator. I also an experienced youth worker and a trainee Alexander technique teacher. I've been working in this employment for 30 plus years, mostly involving students experiencing learning challenges in the local school settings, both primary and secondary. Most often this is due to specific learning difficulties, i.e. dyslexia, autism, occupational health and therapy needs, well-being issues, family difficulty or school reluctance or outright refusal. I also work with young adults journeying out of this world from school into employment or other tertiary education or vocational settings. My work is mostly into the student family homes, occasionally at local schools, community settings, and also at my home. Generally, I am employed privately or by health and community service providers. And also I have an ongoing and committed passion towards homeschool teaching. So that's me, and my relationship into Kim, we've been friends for 25 years, I imagine, you know, and I'd like to say she's probably one of my favourite people in the world, you know. And, you know, and I can say that easily, and we first really got into this work together when I started teaching Kim and Morgan's son, Tarquin, over a 5-year period.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
A most remarkable young man in a most remarkable family. So, yeah, really happy to be here. I'll probably hand over to Kim. I'll introduce her, unless you want to start off first. Yeah, I know it's a bit top-loaded with who we are, but that's how we begin. Okay, so Kim Percy. Kim is a multidisciplined artist working within the space of social change. She has exhibited in many festivals and awards, including the BOAA Biennale of Australian Art, the Ballarat Photo Biennale, the Head-On Photo Festival, the Brown Nest Photographic Prize, the Mullen Conceptual Photographic Prize and the Glover Landscape Award. Over her 30-year career, she has had many solo exhibitions, including a solo exhibition in New York in 2016. Kim is currently undergoing a PhD, researching dyslexia from a visual arts perspective, and is a sessional lecturer at Federation Uni Ballarat. She's presented at the British Dyslexia Association Conference in 2024, the ACUADS Conference 2024 with her paper, The Hidden Toll of Dyslexia in Art and Design Schools, and has written other papers on dyslexia, art and metamodernism. She lives in Hepburn Springs, in Hepburn.
I do.
Yeah. And is co-director and curator of Radius Art with Morgan, to where we gather, and is a senior designer at Design Scope. Kim is also a member of the new Dyslexic Research Centre and organisation Rethink Dyslexia.
Great.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Here she is.
Thanks very much, Pete. I wanted just to start just setting the scene. So at the moment my PhD is titled Visualising the Invisible, an investigation into dyslexia through the lens of visual art. My main research question asks, is there a correlation with dyslexia and visual art? And if so, how does this connection manifest in my own creative process? I've got about 4 months left of my PhD, so I'm at the tail end, and through that journey I've done a lot of research into dyslexia as well as into my own practice as an artist. I might start. Sorry?
The mics don't work.
The mics don't work.
Oh, it should be working. Yeah, it's working. Maybe just talk. I can go a bit closer. I can hear
Is
it.
that better?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to say she's adaptive.
You have to
All
talk
right.
quite
Is that better?
Yeah.
a bit closer.
Yeah.
A bit closer, I'm going to be eating.
No.
No. A bit closer is good.
It's
Yeah.
good.
All right, I'll just perch on the edge here. All right, I just want to start a little bit with my story because it's probably a typical story of a lot of adult dyslexics. So I wasn't diagnosed until I was 51, and I'll talk a bit about that process. And my story starts with my son's story, and that seems to be quite common when I've been speaking with other adult dyslexics. I wasn't picked up as a child, and not because my mum fully, absolutely behind me, but it wasn't on the radar. And part of that was also because I read, and I read, and I read, and I would just be picking up books. I'd read a book a night. I was just, couldn't consume books fast enough. But I couldn't spell. I also struggled with things like organisation, trying to organise myself, trying to get things in on time, deadlines. I struggled, please come in, find yourself a seat.
Yes.
I struggled with things like having to listen to an instruction and then follow through the instruction. So all of these things sort of, I sort of fumbled my way through school. I left school in year 11. And I also, I was halfway through year 11 when I left school, so I've got a year 10 pass. And I then went overseas for a while, came back and went to art school. Okay, and I found that art was something that I could do. I've always been interested in art, I was always very creative. At one stage I wanted to be a film director and realised that I needed to work with lots of people. And was really shy and introverted, so I found that really intimidating. So I ended up sort of going to art school and majoring in painting and printmaking to start with, and then ended up in photography, where I've kind of stayed. So my main medium is photography, but I'm also a painter and drawing, and I do video as well. In 2016, we noticed our youngest son, Tarquin, was really struggling at school. And part of that struggle was that we noticed that, he wasn't reading maybe the way that other kids were reading. The main thing that kept coming up was his behaviour issues. So he spent more time out of the classroom than in the classroom, and was constantly being told he was disruptive, he wasn't listening, he wasn't trying. And this, we weren't seeing the same behaviour at home as what they were seeing at school. So we were like, oh, no, this he seems to be fine. When he was in grade 3, he was suspended from school, and that's when we really realised there was something that needed to happen. Before that, when he was in grade 2, we got a diagnosis of dyslexia, but it was that time in grade 3 that we realised that something needed to change. That's where we brought in Pete. So Pete came in as a tutor to homeschool him, and I think about 3 months he was homeschooled, and then we started him part-time back at school. We tried a few different schools in the area. That was another journey. We found it very difficult to get him into schools. A lot of schools wouldn't take him, including his local school wouldn't take him. Apparently it's a prerogative of the headmaster to whether they'll take a child or not in a state school, which I could see a shocked face there, which we weren't aware of. Yep. So he eventually ended up at that school where he finished his primary school. He's now doing really well. He's in Year 10 and is a fabulous student who is really keen on history, English. He's an amazing writer. Music, he's a fabulous musician and is doing really well. But we had 5 years of intensive one-on-one work with Pete, 3 times, at one stage it was 3 times a week. And that was a really big plus for us. So that's a little bit about my story. So when I decided to do my PhD when I was 51, I wanted to get that official diagnosis of dyslexia. I'd suspected it. It was when I got Tarquin diagnosed, I went, ooh, hello, there's some similarities happening here. So when I got that diagnosis, I thought, great, okay, I can now take this into my own PhD. So I'm doing it through practice-based, which means my own practice of art, and I'm also using autoethnographic methodologies as part of that as well. So I'm looking at my own story. So that diagnosis is really important for me to understand dyslexia. So what I'm going to do is we're going to first of all go through a book that I've written recently. It's a children's book and it's written on the perspective of a child. We're then going to go into talking a bit about what is dyslexia, and we'll look at some of the challenges, some of the strengths. We'll also take it into things about mental health, about labelling and other topics. And at the end we're going to have questions and answers or hopefully answers. Questions, we'll take questions from you all. So by all means, keep your questions and we'll do that at the end. So this is called The Girl Who Tried, and this is one of my paintings, and I've illustrated this book based on, so I've used my own paintings to illustrate the book. Zoe was a girl who tried. Whoops, hang on. On Monday, she sat on her chair. Zoe tried to copy the words from the board, but the letters swam away. She could not catch them. On Tuesday, she sat on the mat. She tried to listen to the teacher, but the teacher gave too many instructions. Zoe was confused. On Wednesday, she lay in the sun. She tried to read a book, but the words jiggled and she giggled. Nothing made sense to her. On Thursday, she sat at a desk. She tried to do maths, but no matter how hard she counted, the numbers kept dancing away. On Friday, she had a headache. She tried to stay home in bed, but her mother told Zoe that she had to go to school anyway. On Saturday, she tried to play tennis, but as much as she tried, she could not hit the ball. The other children laughed at her. On Sunday, she tried to enjoy her time at home where she felt safe and sound, but the tears ran down her face. She was tired of trying. Tomorrow was Monday, and she had to try and try all over again. So this book is part of my PhD. I'll submit it as part of my PhD, and I'm going to write a resource guide for parents and teachers that will go along with it to help hopefully support and answer some of those questions that come up in this book. Come on in. There's some seats at the front if you want to come down. So, what is dyslexia? Now, there's going to be quite a few of you who are going to come into this talk with a whole lot of knowledge. There may be some of you who are just beginning a journey of understanding what dyslexia is. So firstly, dyslexia is not a visual issue. It's got nothing to do with the eyes. It's a neurocognitive brain difference. Okay, so it's about the brain. So not glasses, coloured paper, might help some students just because they've got a preference for that, but it isn't. There is no scientific research saying that it will fix or cure. It's not incurable. Dyslexia is not something you cure. It is genetic, so it does travel in families. Between 10 to 20% of the population are dyslexic, depending on which study you look at, and 50% of neurodivergence, the umbrella that covers autism, ADHD, Tourette's, dyslexia. So about 50% is dyslexic, so we're the highest proportion in the neurodivergent banner. Just a little bit, I'm not going to go too much into about the brain. It's not my area of specialty, but I think it's just interesting to know a little bit about it. So dyslexics use brain differently to think and learn. So you can see two diagrams here. You've got controlled children at the top and dyslexic children who are learning to read down the bottom. And you can see that different parts of the brain fire for the dyslexic learners than the what we call possibly neurotypical learners. There is a whole lot of information, and I'm going to give you some resources. I'll get your names and emails at the end, and I can send you some resources. But basically, it's to do with I'm really bad at saying long names like this, but there is less grey and white matter, and there is in the left hemisphere occipito-temporal and temporal paresia level areas. I've really stuffed that up, haven't I?
Yeah.
Anyway,
We get it.
there is a difference.
Yeah.
So this illustrates it. Do you have any?
Yeah. Well, essentially that area is here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And here, you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the memory area?
It is. Judith, have you got any?
Not really. A little bit further, maybe. Yes.
Okay. So challenges. A lot of us know about the challenges with dyslexia, and I'm using the term challenges as opposed to deficit or difficult, problem or. So I like to try and stay in a positive framework. So typically, reading, spelling, comprehension and writing are challenges for many dyslexic people. Dyslexia does not affect your intelligence. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you're less intelligent, which we often, back in the day, used to think that there was a correlation. Some of the other challenges which we may not understand or may not know about, but are probably as important, are things to do with cognitive overload. So that's when a child or a person gets overwhelmed with too much happening and need to slow down, or the brain sort of starts to go, oh, I can't take on anymore. So that is a cognitive overload. Poor organisation skills, so executive functioning. So, trying to, make sure you've got your bag, your water bottle, your school books, and get your homework. Too much. Okay, so that organisation just trying to get themselves from A to B, I'm getting bombarded by a mosquito. Time management can be really difficult for many dyslexic people. So just knowing how to organise themselves within the day and trying to arrive somewhere at time.
Yeah, Kim, can I just talk quickly to that?
Yeah.
A lot of those things belong to, in my opinion, about how we sequence and order things, so, and how we retain that, so, and how many of those things we can order at once. So primarily they may look as other things, but essentially their core basis can often be that.
Focus in class or focus at work, so they can also be really difficult. So getting sidetracked, I got sidetracked with a mosquito, flew past, is an example of that. What we call slow processing or phonological speed. So just being able to, dyslexics often may have trouble with, if there's too many instructions or too many things happening at once, actually processing all of that information at the same time. Okay, so just having needing to take things slower, less instructions at once, those sort of things. So dyslexics may need more time to do things. They may need reminders. Information might need to be chunked, so put into first of all we're doing this, then we're doing that. Dyslexics also like a big overview. Today we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, or in a work setting, today we're going to, this is what the meeting is, an overview of what the meeting is. Fewer instructions. Don't try, 2 instructions, max, at once. Go and get your bag and your shoes. Full stop. Information in multiple forms. So making sure that information is visual, auditory, written down. So it's not just, you're not relying on only one type of way of remembering something. And explicit language, being really clear is important. Often instructions, they give you the entire story and backstory about why you need to do something. No, just what needs to be done. Really, let's be really just clear. Okay, you can give the backstory afterwards or in another form, but yeah, just being really clear with that explicit language. Yep. My favourite is looking at the strengths. Oh, look, my slides. Oh, no, I can't see it up there. Okay, so strengths. We often spend a lot of time looking at the challenges, but let's look at the strengths, and that's where I like to stay. So dyslexics they're often overlooked. So harnessing those strengths, with kids, but also with adults is really, really important. So strengths include things like problem solving. Dyslexics are really good at nutting out things. They're really great at big picture thinking. Let's solve world hunger. Great, let's go. All right. Big picture thinking. We have really strong visual memory. Okay, so often I will see something, okay, where are my car keys? And I'll see them sitting on the desk in my office. Okay, I've left them there, but it's a picture of it. It's not a instruction or a word it's a picture that I see. Narrative reasoning. So, dyslexic, did you want to speak to that?
No.
Narrative reasoning. So, storytelling. And using narrative to remember things is also. So, when I went, I remember I was walking down and I got sidetracked over there and I put my keys down, and the story is that was my day when I walked into the office and I did something, and that was how I remembered it. So narrative reasoning, storytelling. Pattern recognition. So seeing things in patterns, or seeing where something is similar or where something is standing out. So dyslexic people often are really good at things. Some dyslexics are good at coding because they can see where the code goes wrong. I'm not one of those, but I do know some dyslexic people who are really great at that sort of thing because I can see the detail. I use that patterning for things like hanging an exhibition like this. I can see very quickly what needs to go together. And visual spatial awareness. Okay, so this has been able to see in 3 dimensions, see things in a visual spatial way. So I can walk in and go, okay, I can see this space and I can see the artwork that needs to go in it, and I can rotate things in my mind when I'm needing to hang a work. Or objects, often dyslexic people are able to rotate things 3-dimensionally in their mind. And there is some talk that may be also why words get jumbled up. Okay, so that flexibility is a strength, but it's also can be a challenge as well.
Kim, I just want to add to the strength conversation.
Excuse me, could you speak up?
Oh, I could. Is that better? Thank you. In relation to the strength issue, I just want to be really clear that it's not deficit-based, so that you have a deficit here, so you're strong here. You know, it often belongs to the lived experience and how they've navigated the world, how they've been guided that world, and their curiosity and inquiry. And often we overlook gift, you know, and I'm finding that more and more in my work, you know. So there's a perception that belongs to the young people that I work with that I don't see as common elsewhere.
So in my research, I found that there's a high prevalence of dyslexics and other neurodiversities in creative industries such as art, design, performance, film, engineering, writing, and there is some research that supports this. I do believe we need to do more research to actually find out what those numbers are. But the research that I've looked at have said about between 30 to 75% of students at art school show dyslexic traits. So that's very, very high. And when I look at my students, my class this year was 100% neurodivergent. So, and that was autism, dyslexia, ADHD. So I'm seeing a very, very high percentage of creatives who are also dyslexic and other neurodivergent. Just a little bit about dyslexia and co-occurrence. So there's terms that you may have heard of. So ADHD, and you've got your inattentive and hyperactivity and a whole range of other ADHDs, and we're looking at about 40% co-occurrence with dyslexia. Autism, there's also a percentage. It was actually higher than I thought. I was looking at research and I thought it would have been about 3%, and I thought that it was about 20%. Judith, is that, sorry, Dr. Judith Hudson is also an expert in this area, so I'm looking at that, yeah. Yeah. Dysgraphia. So dysgraphia is difficulty with spelling and written expression. So it may affect the speed of writing the accuracy of transcription and conveying ideas in writing. Okay, so dysgraphia. Dyscalculia, we're looking at about 26%, and that's difficulty with numbers and maths. Also, it can be things like telling the time, directions, recognising place values, you know, when you've got to do your decimal places in maths, and where to actually put that decimal point can be another sign of dyscalculia. Dyspraxia, or developmental coordination disorder, which is now known as, affects with coordination and motor skills, such as throwing a ball, balancing, building Lego, doing puzzles, little things like this. About 52%, so that's very high co-occurrence. So just some terms there. Okay, this year I went to the British Dyslexia Conference, and I just wanted to bring a little bit of that research back into the room. Do we have any teachers in the room? One? Just one? Two. All right, two. And so parents? One, two, a few. And people, oh, you don't need to disclose. We'll talk about disclosure.
Learning support in an education
Learning
environment.
support.
Yeah, learning support, not teacher.
Great. And I've got another learning support back there. Yeah, learning support. Awesome. Yeah.
Early childhood educator.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. So one of the things that we're finding is there's a massive concern around mental health. And the dyslexic conference in University of Surrey there was a lot of discussion around mental health. So neuroscientist who was a keynote speaker, Foucault Hoft, discussed her research into the neurobasis of dyslexia and the correlation with stress, anxiety and depression. Elsie Van Bergen research looked at genetic disposition of dyslexia and the correlation with home environments. Specifically, there is little evidence to say that being read to as a child will increase your reading ability. So what we're finding, or what the research that I've been looking at, is saying it will increase their vocabulary, it will increase their comprehension, but it will not increase their actual physical reading ability. You're shaking your head, Judith. And Thura Oro's research stresses emotional concerns, including a comorbidity or co-occurrence of dyslexia and behavioural problems leading to learning issues. So she was looking at the dyslexia increases learning issues, and the learning issues increases stress, and you end up in this cyclic, which is what we found with our son. So there's research of high mental health concerns and dyslexia can be helped with a lot more understanding about how to support students and people in the workplace with dyslexia, and I'll talk a bit about the workplace as well. I just want to talk a bit about labels, because I get a lot of people, it will start just... I do get people saying to me, oh, I don't know, look, my child, I'm fine, I don't need a label, it's not a problem, I'll just, I'm just a bit different, I'm a bit quirky, And I just want to talk a bit about my argument for labels, and I think that all people, it's, your individual preference, but for me, and I've just got a little animation which I'm going to use to, as a theory that I've got. So, to paint a picture, I can see a landscape covered in tiny hills. On each hill stands a person, and for this purpose, let's argue, or let's imagine that 20% of the people on the hills are dyslexic. And we're going to paint, is this going to work? I'm just going to think about it. Let's paint 20% of those people read. Now, let's give each of those red people a red thread. And all of a sudden, we've got a community. They're able to connect and talk with one another. There's research says that 80% of people who leave school don't know they're dyslexic. So let's take away 80% of those red threads. And all of a sudden, we've got a very small group of people who are able to communicate, support, and strengthen each other. So it's just an idea that I had about labelling and the importance. If we imagine that we are able to bring strength into that label, or that idea of owning the difference, then we can build and strengthen our community, our communication, our research, and our awareness. Oh, it's just going to keep playing now. Hang on.
Oh.
Uh-oh. All right. So just some considerations of how we can better support dyslexic people. And I think that one of the things that is to gain any support or accommodations, either at school, at university, or in workplace, people have often got to prove they're dyslexic. In university, you need to prove that you're dyslexic, and to do that, you need to have a recent assessment of dyslexia from an education psychologist. In the workplace, you may need to disclose that you're dyslexic, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. The assessment process can be expensive and very inaccessible. So at a clinic, we're looking at about $1,500 to $3,000 for an assessment, which is out of the realm of a lot of families or a lot of individuals who maybe not have that disposable income. Also, there are very few people that are actually diagnosed, in Australia. So you've got to go through a clinic to be able to do it. You need somebody who's qualified, and there's very few people who can do that. In Gippsland, where I was teaching, I had one student who didn't have access. He couldn't. When I saw him in first year, he was trying to get assessed. By the time I saw him again in third year, he wasn't able to leave his bedroom. I was teaching him online. He couldn't get an assessment. He had co-occurrences, probably with autism and ADHD as well. And he was really struggling. And he was struggling to complete the degree. I ask, how can schools and universities catch students before they fail or disengage or drop out? If we're looking at about 10 to 20% of our students, there's a lot of children and young people who may not be able to, they're not coping in the classroom. They're not coping at university, and I'm seeing a lot of dropouts or a lot of people really failing and difficulties in that space. And Pete is able to catch some of those people in our town, but there's a lot of people who don't get caught. So I also just want to say that creative courses such as art are more likely to attract dyslexics and other neurodivergents, and therefore they're really important to maintain. And we're seeing a lot of cuts in that area, and I gave this talk, or a version of this talk, to Federation University in the Education Department, hoping that I can speak to the right people about building that education.
Kim, can I just talk to that? For me, I want to emphasise it's not just about them going to university or going into secondary school. It's about achieving relational to their capacity, curiosity and inquiry and need. So often I'll have students, who have done an amazing job just to cope in the factory, but they've come out with results which are a bit mediocre, relational, to what I see as their capacity. And as soon as we do that, we close down opportunity, you know? And it doesn't get discussed enough. And Kim was the one who really taught me this. We were in schools, you know, Tarquin was going, you know, for this result, that result. They were happy with him on the middle of the road. But as I saw it, and as we're seeing now, this is a young boy, adolescent, of huge capacity in many areas. So I just want to, and then that even reeks out into employment and even into life itself. So I just want to...
Yeah, thanks. And the research that is coming out from La Trobe that Judith has worked on with Shay Whistle is showing about, I think about 67% of people who are underemployed in their capacity, so that they're not getting the employment that they could get due for a whole lot of reasons. Yes.
I was an educational psychologist, I'm not at the moment, and working in Queensland, and I've done lots and lots of cognitive assessments in schools. But just going back to you about, why aren't they catching students? Like every student that I tested, the learning support teacher would do a dyslexic assessment on them, the ones that they were allowed to do in schools. So, yeah, every student I saw was assessed.
There's very few
But I'm
cognitive.
not so familiar with Victorians.
It's very few that actually go into schools here.
Yeah.
We get very few education psychologists that come to schools.
Yeah, I will.
And there's no screening.
But
There's
she
no...
said something about a test that learning support can do.
Yeah, learning support teachers in Queensland had a test that they could do, because I didn't know that in my school was in cognitive assessments, risks and whitsies and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, every student and I worked in private schools because I did work as a guidance officer in mainstream schools, but when I finished that I got lots of work in private schools and they always assess them, so I'm just surprised about that.
Yeah.
These were kids with either intellectual impairment or learning difficulties, not just dyslexia.
Yeah, so when we tried to get Tarquin changed schools in grade 4, I was told that we don't really have dyslexic students in the school. He's 15 now, so that's not that long ago. Okay, so the attitude's still lagging, and I think Australia is lagging behind as well. So I'm really glad to hear your experience.
Maybe because when I did work in Victoria a little bit, Lewis and Lewis used to do the cognitive assessments, and because I was relating directly with the schools, they wanted the best result for the students, so they would always do a dyslexic assessment.
Yeah. Into Victoria, I'll support Kim on this, it is very, very low. And they're just about to do mandatory screening in grade 1 for all Victorian students, and that was supposed to begin next year. So that is beginning to change, but up until now.
That'll include dyslexia, will it?
Yes, that's its primary focus, yeah. There's still some argument around what that will look like, but there's someone back there.
I was supervising a PhD student who looked at provision of screening in New South Wales. He had one school with 800 students, and they didn't have one dyslexic in there. So that was the story. We in the end we moved from New South Wales and went to another area because there was just no connection between what the schools had got and what provision there were for the students.
Because thanks for sharing. There was such a high, in the schools, these children that I was seeing, there was such a high percentage of children with learning difficulties or intellectual impairment, but they also had behavioural difficulties or mental health issues, of course, because they were really different. So
Let's come back to that, and we'll park that, because there's probably a bit of discussion around that. Thank you. And I don't have too many slides left. So disclosure, I just want to talk a bit about disclosure because I think it's really important. So dyslexics often don't feel safe to disclose their difference in a workplace setting. And this often leads to this notion of either masking, hiding, or passing. So passing is a terminology that Alexander Passe has just been talking about recently, where you hide under the radar. Okay, you pass on opportunities, pass on situations or events so that you can keep your dyslexia out off the table. So this is an artwork that I did, and I haven't sort of talked much about my art practice, but this is an artwork I did that talks about the oscillation of when I decided to disclose. So I came into, when I got my assessment, I was working for a university, and I needed to make a decision about whether I disclosed that or whether I kept it to myself. And that felt to me like being on a swing over raging water, you know, and I took that really quite seriously about what implications that would have. Because deciding to disclose can be frightening. It can be, there's a lot of fear around the stigma of dyslexia. And there's a fear around the repercussions that may have. So repercussions being treated differently, seen as less competent, not being offered promotions, or being singled out in meetings or in classrooms. So they're just some of the things that often happen with the decision to disclose. I've just got a video that I made as, and this was a video that was presented as part of a poster at the British Dyslexia Conference, and the poster was actually an AR. So it was a poster. It had a whole lot of statistics on some of my research and findings on artists and dyslexia. And then if you held your phone up on the poster and you had a particular app, this video would play. Now what I did is I used my own work, artwork, but the voices that you hear are AI generated, and they're quotes that I got off a survey that I did of dyslexic artists. So these artists came as an anonymous survey. I got 67 artists who filled it in, and they made some comments as part of it. And I wanted to capture those comments because that humanised the data. It wasn't just about, you know, where'd you go to school, how da. I wanted to know more about their thoughts. So I'm just going to play this. It's only a few minutes on. Whoops, and that's really low. Hang on.
Oh, the sound.
If I do that, and if I do this, hopefully you're going to hear.
Oh, it's not.
Video that's attached to the conference poster or visualising the invisible by John Percy. This poster features an anonymous survey that I did as part of my initial PhD research into art and dyslexia. The words are from anonymous participants of the survey,
It's very faint.
and the voices are AI generated.
While I'm not currently practicing art, I am very aware that I frequently imagine artistic creations. I recall as an art student being quite happy with the thought process and creative imagining, and would wonder why I needed to physically create the image installation.
I've considered perhaps the reason why my creative skills are fine-tuned could be due to being neurodivergent. I am highly skilled in innovative thinking and creative design thinking. However, specific traits of empathy, intuition, dislike of loud noises, violence, crowded places, negative emotions make me prone to depression. As a result, cognitive and physical processing of trauma-difficult situations makes me highly resilient as much as I wish to avoid those situations.
Yes, I am still learning to navigate my off-on learning style, My brain will hyperfocus on specific art making for a short period, then my brain completely switches off. I keep that artwork and return to it later. I have been told it looks like I am bouncing around different content, although I know the threads of commonality between seemingly different modalities.
I have always felt that I think, see, inhabit the world and myself in a way that is not normal or typical, and that some kind of disconnect exists in the way I relate to most other people, which is also accompanied by an acute sensitivity. But I am not sure whether that is because I am neurodiverse or because I have been brought up by a parent who almost certainly is.
Alright, so, yeah. Oops, hang on, just some references. That's my web address.
Thank you, Kim. Amazing. I think we might begin with questions from the floor. I'm pretty good at tracking people. And if you just put your hand up and I'll just go, yep, I've got you in the bank here. So I'll start here. And you can introduce yourself, or you don't have to at all. Just, but we welcome your voice into this event. Thank you.
My name's Jennifer, and I was wondering if you'd done any research into dyslexia and ageing, because I think about, I'm 76 now, and I think about how long it took me to attain certain skills like reading, because neuro-linguistic, I have a lack of neuro-linguistic. I have poor neuro-linguistic awareness, so I read by memorising the picture of words, and so I was 12 before I managed to read something for myself, and I've noticed that I will, if I'm not using a word for a long time, I no longer have that visual reference to remember what it is, and I cannot sound it out. And I'm wondering if you've come across anything about ageing.
Not about ageing, but what you're describing is something I experience a lot. So if I can't see a word in my mind's eye, I can't speak it. So I have trouble with learning languages for that reason, and I have trouble with my vocabulary. So the vocabulary I've got in my brain and what I can read is far broader than what I can speak, because I can't articulate a word unless I can see it in my mind's eye. But not about ageing.
Nothing on ageing for me, but I'm just hearing you describe your process is a description that children bring to me. And often it just might be, they're requesting from their parent to get, the jug of water, and they'll say, oh, can you pass me that thing? And they go, what thing? Oh, that thing that holds water, Yeah, what water? And they go, well, the water we drink, and they still can't find that word. And then the parent may say, or I may say, oh, you mean the jug? They go, of course I meant the jug, So it's not in their knowledge bank, but it just doesn't transfer into the spoken word.
I think Judith has just got a point on that.
Peter, you just described my only husband.
Yeah.
He's an aging dyslexic. Well, not very aging. Going back to what the lady was saying, there's been research done over the years that developmental dyslexia is impacted by things like hormone changes. So in adolescence it peaks, the problems peak. The aging, we're into young adults and adulthood, but also more on the aging, menopausal women, they lose an awful lot of language in menopausal period, which if they don't read more, they lose permanently. But what you were saying about if you don't use it, a word often enough, it disappears. So doing crosswords, doing anything to do with language that can keep those words going will help. You do two crosswords a day? And if I could just add, I find the same thing with theories and concepts that I know really well professionally. And as I'm getting older, if I'm not using them all the time because I no longer perhaps am working in that area, they go. And I would need to, realise that and then have another look at it, relearn it, put it back in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dot. Yep.
I think I've just learned that at the age of 70 I'm dyslexic.
Oh, welcome. Yes.
Tooth stream.
Yes.
Tooth stream. Dental floss.
Yeah.
Tooth stream.
Yeah.
I lost dental floss for 3 years.
Yes. Yeah.
And I work in the arts.
Yeah.
And I could never do anything with numbers, ever. Could never hit a ball or catch a ball.
Yeah.
I've always laughingly said I'm organisationally dyslexic, but now I think I've discovered I actually am. Just full stop.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're welcome to chat with us after, and maybe the woman
I had to throw out a DHS.
Yes.
I couldn't organise.
Thank you for sharing. Over to the back. Yep.
I was just wondering, I'm not sure maybe you could answer it here, or when you were working with Kim's son,
Yep.
I'm just wondering, without perhaps being too long, what sort of activities and exercises you did with him, because I suppose some of the clients I have, I'm just a counselling psychologist now, but sometimes it's helpful to know these things, when I'm working with parents.
Yes. Look, I'll give you a very clear, short answer, and we can chat afterward. And anyone else that wants to chat about teaching children, I have lots of information. Look, the only way is through explicit, one-to-one, direct, synthetic phonics instruction. Synthetic being not that it doesn't exist, but how we synthesise and take words apart. So basically, the methodology I use is based on Orton Gillingham, which is over 100 years old. The teaching developed by a neuroscientist and his associate, who was a psychologist. So the instruction is very systematic. It has a narrative to it, and any mistake made by the child or the sequencing belongs to me, the teacher. And as I go, I have a diagnostic within that, and then I will return to that all the time.
Is that something you've developed yourself, or you've done a course?
No. I've done about 5 courses, and every time it returns to the Orton Gillingham method, and it's evidence-based. It's now supported by neuroscience, and the beautiful thing is with it, the instruction is so clear, the process is so precise, and even the delivery that I have to get into, that children have learning success. Once children have learning success, they'll just keep turning up.
So when Kim was saying, that your son seemed to be coping well in year 10, new student type thing, is that what got him there?
Yeah, that is what got him there, and he probably taught me more about teaching than any child I've worked with. Yeah. So I just wavered from that methodology just a bit, There would be rebound, and so this is the more and more I do this work, that saying that reading is rocket science is a real truism.
Yeah. Do you have any information?
We'll get some
I
resources.
totally understand.
Yeah. Look, I've written it all out, and I'll provide that to you in an email, but just chat with me later on. Thank you. David, and then to the back.
Is there any research on the effect of childhood trauma and childhood abuse on dyslexia?
Yes, there's quite a lot of research. Alexander Passe is one person who's written a book on school-based trauma. There's quite, and it's coming out more and more that the trauma experience of dyslexics at school, and how that's affected them going forward is, yeah, there's a lot coming out at the moment.
What about early childhood trauma? Like within the home?
I'm sure there is. I don't know of a particular thing. Judith?
So I've got a student at the moment who's looking at it from birth to 5 years.
Right.
Looking at the connection with those children.
Right.
That are also in that home care because of the trauma. There's a lot going on. It's a very exciting time in terms of research, but we haven't got many answers, but we've got lots of people looking at various avenues. That is something more.
Guy at the back.
Look, my name's Peter, and I have a tarpon. Is it your son? I have one at home, picture perfect the way you described it. I don't want to take more than a few minutes of your time because there are a lot of people here. And the question preceding the former preempted my question, but I still have a little adjunct to that. And that is, I was interested to know, because you said you described his struggles, and you spoke about him doing very well now in year 10. My little boy is about to enter secondary school. He's had almost no extra help in the primary system. I don't think the funding's there or the resources. My question, to be specific, is if this fella Ben Voss, the book I'm reading still, he's a bit of a guru, isn't he? And he's American, we won't hold that against him, but he's got a lot to say, and he speaks about, he confirms what you say, there's no cure, it's not a disease, it can't be cured. So if that's the case, working with Tarquin clearly in the way you have, Peter, has assisted his capacity to read, hasn't it? Clearly. But you can't cure, you can't suddenly become, over years, become a great reader and writer. So my question to be specific now is, what other supports did he get in order for him to thrive without too much difficulty in year 10? If his reading and writing has clearly improved, but not up to the standards that we set in our education system. Look, do you understand my question?
Yeah, so Tarquin had a lot of input from psychologists, OTs to start with. When I first started, we looked at the diagnosis when he was 7. I went down the rabbit hole of looking at kinesiology, diet, all sorts of things, and then as I learned more about dyslexia, I realised that it was learning, and that I needed to support his learning through that, as well as his emotional well-being. And I will say that yes, he is thriving. He reads well, but he doesn't have reading stamina, so his comprehension is really good, but he won't just pick up a book and read it for pleasure, for example. His writing is really good, but again, he doesn't have stamina to keep writing. But what he does write, he will be an A student or an A+ student in the content. But if you try and read it, it's really hard to read because of his spelling. Okay. Emotionally, I can see the impact that's early learning experiences had on him. He's resistant a lot of the time. He can be difficult to be in the classroom. He's very strong-willed, which is both a positive, and some of his teachers would say a bit of that. So there is a residue or a thread, and we've tried to support him. He's got a fabulous village around him. Of people that love and care for him, so yeah.
Okay. Does the school offer support, like speech to text? That's really what.
Yeah. Can I just ask? Are you local?
No. Well, Castlemaine. No.
Oh, okay. So I work locally, but I've noticed a shift within teaching on learning support. So, but I've noticed with the teachers now, they're learning a lot about differentiated ways of teaching in a classroom. And with that coming speech to text and all of these things that they're actually providing now. They're actually going forward So I work at the secondary college in Daylesford now, and I'm seeing a massive, really exciting change around the way they're delivering classroom content and how they're differing that between kids.
Right, well that was really specific. What I wanted to know, what support has he been, does he get this kind of support in the school you're in?
He could, but he doesn't take it up.
He doesn't take it, yeah. Peter, I'm really happy to chat with you. And one of the things that the only way to teach reading and writing is to teach reading and writing, and I'm very clear on that. The difficulty with schools, it's not about what you know; it's about writing about what you know. So the institution itself is the difficulty rather than the child.
Yeah.
And I just want to go to your point on stamina. Okay, they do have stamina, but what we have to understand is they're working 4 times as hard in this process than the other children. So, when we talk about labelling, the words that belong to, the sort of neurotypical child don't transfer over to the dyslexic child.
And just with the assistive technology, which I think is fabulous, I use it all the time. I use AI all the time. And with my students, my university students, I'm fully encouraging of them to be able to submit assignments in all sorts of different ways. So if they need to submit as a video or an audio or in person, they can do that. I also encourage all sorts of assistive technology for them to use. Most of them don't necessarily take me up on it. I think they're still, and it's about that stigma. I don't want to be seen as different from the people in my classroom. So that's really great to hear that teachers are doing it universally across the classroom, because until that actually happens and all students have access to this technology, it's really difficult for the dyslexic student to go, yeah, I'll be the one who uses the audio book when everyone else is sitting down reading. So I think it needs to be a universal designed program that really helps all students.
And we need to train the teachers better.
We need to train the teachers better, which is why I've sent it to teachers at Fed Uni.
Okay. Now I'll just go 1, 2, and then we might close up. And we've got lots of things over here. So, Selena?
Selena?
Oh, didn't you? Yeah. It's okay. I do. No, it doesn't. And over to.
Oh, sorry, Kylie, we've met before,
yes,
so I do MSL as
yes.
well. So my question is about something you raised earlier about bringing in screening for grade 1, and this is a question I've actually been asking for years. So yes, if they are going to bring in the screening and screen all students when they come through grade 1, what happens then? Good question. What happens then? And how are teachers then going to change their teaching style to ensure that dyslexic students in their class are being taught in a direct, explicit, synthetic fashion so that they are learning just like the neurodivergent students in their class? So yes, I think it's great that they're going to bring in screening, but they then have to scoop up those children and make sure that they are getting the same opportunities.
Kylie, I have no idea. And the experience in South Australia when they've done the screening, not only around dyslexia, 45% of those students were flagged as needing extra support and instruction. So, that it's not just about dyslexia. There's a whole lot of, a range of things that will be captured by that. And then once it is captured, then how is it going to be not only supported, but taught back into?
Yes.
So I think that, I know that the Victorian government has got a inclusive learning hub, and they've got specialist teachers who are going out and into different schools. So hopefully that will start to build up that training and resources that are in the schools. Because at the moment we've had the reading wars for a long time, where it's whole word against phonics-based instruction. Now this isn't an area of my expertise, but only as a parent. But I am aware that there is changes happening it's going to be slow, and we just need to, as families, be really onto the schools to insist on having this better instruction or more appropriate instruction for our students. And also, because I'm catching them in university, and it can be really difficult. And they're the ones who got to uni, and seeing how their confidence, their anxiety, we're seeing anxiety just absolutely through the roof. And we're also seeing this disengagement or struggling to engage at university level. And in the workplace, we're seeing people also, again, burnout is huge. And just trying to support people so that they can get the accommodations and support and understanding in their workplace. So it's across the board. It's not just looking at the early years. We need to be aware of this all the way through and really help dyslexic people to not only survive but thrive. And we're masters at coping strategies. We're masters of finding ways around things. But it's got to be much easier if we could just do it. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just want to add to that, whenever I talk to a parent or a family or even to schools, we actually have to reimagine the child, and then we have to reimagine ourselves in relation to that child or that adult. So there's this whole system, this universal experience that has to come into it. It's not just about direct instruction. It's changing the way we think and feel and do and deal with difference. And for me, there is a beautiful journey within that. And, I've been grateful and amazed and touched in my life by my experience into this field. So, and I want to thank Kim for that, and I want to thank what she's brought to today, and I want to thank you all for being here. There's tea, coffee, biscuits. The biscuits are gluten-free, but they are gluttonous. Yeah, and but I'll just leave us with Kim to close off.
Yeah, so thank you. So part of what I'm trying to do is bring art. So I'll have an exhibition in March of my artwork at the Post Office Gallery in Ballarat. And that will be work that talks about dyslexia, and it hopefully is another way for people to maybe come and meet and share some of not only my experiences, but I often find that other people share their own experiences in that. So art has got an amazing way of being able to extend and communicate in ways that maybe language can't. So yeah, always happy to answer questions. What I'll do is I'll put a piece of paper up. If you want to put down your email and name, we can send you out some resources as well. So thank you all very much for coming and sitting and just being such a fabulous community of people.
Yes.